So good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock, so we're going to get ready to get started. We would like to welcome everyone to the Museum of the Albemarle for today's History for Lunch program. For those of you here in the auditorium, please mute your cell phones. And for those of you on Zoom, please mute your microphones and use the chat for your questions. We will have a Q&A session for everyone at the end of the lecture. But before we get started today, I would like to let everyone know that we do have our program calendar for May through August. It's available at the front desk if you would like to pick one up. There may be a slight change for June the 4th, but we are working on that currently. We have a lot of programs scheduled for this summer and hope that you can join us for all of them. The programs offered are funded by the Friends of the Museum of the Albemarle, Inc. And if you would like to join the support group, please pick up an application at the information desk. FOMOA, Inc. also has a program, Adopt an Artifact. The program addresses the specialty needs of MOA artifacts needing professional conservation. Currently, we have a World War I jacket and cap that were added to the program. The artifacts belong to Walter Raleigh Parker, a Hartford County native who was assigned to Hampton Roads during World War I, where he performed physicals and health checks on sailors and Marines. While serving, he also faced the full brunt of the 1918 influenza pandemic. After his discharge in August 1919, he practiced medicine in Rich Square, North Carolina, in Northampton County, until his retirement. If you're interested in more information, please see the Friends of the Museum of the Albemarle's Adopt an Artifact program flyer, which is located at the front desk. Our next History for Lunch is scheduled for Wednesday, May the 21st at noon. We will be featuring author Bill Barber, Independent Seacoast Companies. Mr. Barber will highlight some of the men from northeastern North Carolina who served along our coast and kept the British at bay. Lastly, we do have a program that is scheduled for Thursday evening with Lucky 757, and we are completely sold out of that event. So I just wanted to let you all know that we will have a packed house on Thursday evening with 757, which will highlight the closing of the Where the Waves Break, which is a current exhibit that we have. Now, today we're going to get to our topic. We have Mr. Scott Perry, who will provide an in-depth look at Corporal Seth E. Perry and his role in the American Expeditionary Forces during the final days of World War I. We welcome Mr. Perry to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me this. My wife always tells me not to speak too long, so I try to time myself. She said, you get long-winded, nobody wants to hear it. So I'm like, okay, let me keep it limited. So I'll get my clock up here. Oh, there it is. Okay. Hi, my name is Scott Perry, and today I'm going to give a talk on Seth Perry and the 119th Infantry Expeditionary Unit that went to France and Belgium during World War I. Before I get started, I got a little bit of housekeeping I'd like to do. I am the commander of the American Legion here locally in Elizabeth City. I've been the commander since 2018, and we are about now to turn that over to another commander next year. Seth Perry, it was dear to me because Seth Perry was my great uncle. So obviously I'd like to keep the post going for that reason alone. But we've also done a lot for the community too over the years. We are a non-alcoholic post. I just let you know that we don't have a canteen or anything, never will. For 20 years, we didn't have a place to meet. So now I want to say this, thanks to the commissioners, on both sides of the aisle, voted for us unanimously to have a piece of property in the Knobs Creek Commerce Park. And so we're going to start construction on a building in June. And so next year, this time, we should have a building that could hold 100 to 150 people. So I think that's a lot of progress in a short time. Here's the good news. The building and the land will be encumbrance free in the sense that we won't use any loans. We raised this money internally over the last 10 years or so. So I think that's quite an accomplishment considering the kind of economy that we live in. Also, we send people to Boys State each year. We send young men to Boys State at least one, sometimes two. And we also sponsor NA and AA. And we also have something called a Distressed Veterans Fund. And that Distressed Veterans Fund can look like someone in the middle of winter needs their electricity bill paid. Someone's homeless for a few days. We'll put them up in a hotel. Or someone just needs simply a little bit of help to get along their way, like they got stuck here in Elizabeth City and they need to go ahead. Once we get them vetted through the national program at the American Legion in Indianapolis, they're vetted as veterans. We come out and help them. I sell 2 books that I wrote here at all these different meetings. They're $10 each. All the proceeds go to the Distressed Veterans Fund. I don't make a dime off this, whether you buy it off Amazon or you buy it here. But I want to make people aware if you want to buy a book. It has nothing to do with the military. It has nothing to do with my military experience. It's simply I'm telling stories through the lens of poetry about people I knew while serving as a probation officer in all these communities. Predominantly, I served in Elizabeth City, but I actually served in all the communities. I guess once the low-hanging fruit was gone, it was time for Scott to transfer somewhere else. So that's kind of how my career went with them, and that's okay. Anyhow, so let's get into Seth Perry. You'll see on your flyer there that I really tried to get a nice map for you to look at today of the battle, and then click and show you the different movements that the unit made. But these maps cost money, and when you do, it's hard to find one. And when you do find a map of World War I, specifically 119th, it's astronomically high. So I said, look, you'll just have to trust me on the movements. But this story actually starts with the 2nd North Carolina being called up to go chase Pancho Villa. So it starts there. In 1916, Blackjack Pershing called up Pacific units all over the country to go chase Pancho Villa. Pancho Villa actually was the last military unit to invade the United States. Notice I specifically say military unit. He invaded Brownsville, Texas, and that was considered a slight to our sovereignty by Woodrow Wilson. Now, notably, he brought all these people together with new technology. He had, for the first time, the American military used airplanes. For the first time, the American military used armored vehicles. And there's a lot of historians that speculate, and I think it's a good speculation, no proof that he wasn't planning to get Pancho Villa. He was just trying to maneuver a large number of men and supplies with the new technology that he had. He also had, I won't go into it, but he had new cannons, new mortars, etc. And one of the ways to train an officer, and this is important later on, an officer gets trained in maneuver. The enlisted people, like myself, get trained in the last 100 yards of the objective. That's why we go over the basics all the time. The bayonet fighting, the rifle range, everything that we go over and over again is for that last 100 yards. But the officers actually maneuver us to what is called the line of departure. And I think that's what Pershing was doing. He was just sending them out and maneuvering his new equipment around Mexico, and then using his officers to get some training. 2 notables that were there on the expedition was a 1 Second Lieutenant George S. Patton and another second lieutenant named Dwight D. Eisenhower, who would later maneuver large companies of men across Europe, not once but twice. And also, one notable thing, Patton did take on some of Pancho Villa's men in a small skirmish. I've read 2 different stories. You got to be careful when you read these primary resources from the time, because you'll get 2 different versions. One version has Patton pulling out his pearl handle pistol and shooting both of them. The other has him sitting on top of the armored vehicle behind a Modus, using a machine gun to take them on. But both stories admit that Patton took both of them, tied them up, and strapped them across the hood of his vehicle and brought them into camp, Western style. So, so George Patton was just like he was from a second lieutenant till he died in Europe. Anyhow, the next stop, and by the way, I want to say one thing about the 2nd North Carolina that you may not know. The 2nd North Carolina has roots to this area. Isaac Gregory was a brigadier general in the Revolutionary War. He formed the 11th and 12th North Carolina. By acclamation of the provisional government at the time in 1775, the 2nd North Carolina was actually formed, and it stayed formed up until this time because then they transferred from the 2nd North Carolina to the 119th, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I want to talk about Isaac Gregory for a minute. He's important because he's the only militia general to lead Continental troops during the Revolutionary War in Camden, South Carolina. And he did a retrograde or a retreat out of the battlefield because General Gates, when he met Cornwallis, he picked up and ran. So General Gregory had to pick up the pieces. And there are some references that say General Gregory was wounded by a bayonet. There's some references that say he wasn't wounded. I don't know. What I try to do is I just try to give you what I read, and if you have some other evidence or other information, certainly bring it forward. So the 2nd North Carolina has a storied history for this region that maybe you were unaware of or didn't know, and maybe you did know. So I wanted to bring that forward because the unit that was formed was the 119th, specifically this region, and it stayed the 119th, the National Guard system, right up to the year 2000. If you'll notice, I got to find, oh, here they are. I have some patches here that they used initially, and I'll pass these around. This one represents the 30th Division, okay? And you notice that it has a O and an H in it. That's for Old Hickory. That is a nod towards General Jackson. And it has 3 X's in it for 30th. The War of 1812 must have been significant for people here because in the primary resources in the Pasquotank Library, you see 30 years later, they're still rolling out their heroes from 1812. So for Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia, Old Hickory and South Carolina was important. It was important enough for the whole division to be named after him. You'll see a lot of this going on. Now, here's the patch for the 119th. It has a dragon on it and it has Undaunted. Initially, this patch had a hornet's nest on top of it, which was a nod to what? It was a nod to Mecklenburg County, which was called the Hornet's Nest by Lord Cornwallis. Anytime your enemy gives you a name, you've been very effective. And Cornwallis said Mecklenburg County and Charlotte, even though the Battle of Charlotte was insignificant in the overall revolution, he still said that was a hornet's nest of resistance. So that gives you some idea as to what respect he ended up having for the local militias there. And they remembered that. Initially, they put the hornet's nest on top of this patch. They took it off because you also have what? You also have units from South Carolina. You have units from Tennessee, and they wanted everybody to be uniform. So, but if you see one with the hornet's nest on it, you know it's an old original one. And so I want to give this to, I'll let y'all can look at it. In the future, you'll see the post 84 wear those patches in our formal settings. We have a Seth E. Perry Day each year on September 29th. And this year we'll carry those colors on our own American Legion uniforms as a way to remember Seth Perry, 119th, and Company K. So I just thought I'd add that in there. So what happens is this: that once they find that they can't capture Poncho Villa, what they do is they go to Camp Schriever in South Carolina. It's the only time that this place has ever been used other than for a mining. It was a played-out mining town. So the military took it over, and engineers built trenches like they would see in into the Belgium and France during World War One. And we also see French and British advisors teaching our guys how to fight this new war. And this is very important because our guys, our military was in the 19th century deeply. I mean, we barely got through. If we had a little more resistance in Cuba during the Spanish-American War, we might not have pulled that off. I mean, we sent our guys into Cuba in the middle of summer with wool uniforms, and more people died of disease than died from the enemy. So we learned a lot about disease and moving mass armies. Also, we ended up staying in the Philippines for 7 years, and we learned a lot from that too, fighting Al Granada and the resistance after the Spanish-American War. Most people have forgotten about that. If you ever get a chance to study the Philippine insurrection after the Spanish-American War, what you'll find is very, very strong parallels with Vietnam. And we kind of got caught in the quagmire a bit before it was called quagmires. So anywho, all that said, we learned a lot from those two instances, but we didn't know, we had no idea what modern warfare would do to us. So what we had to have some help from the French, and we had to have some help from the Brits, especially the Brits. Should be noted, the 27th Division and the 30th Division were the only two divisions that served directly under the British command. Blackjack Pershing wanted an independent command, and he got it, of Americans, but still the two divisions stayed under the British because the British had plans for them. They had a plan to break the Hindenburg Line. They just needed to train these new Americans up. So they finished training at Camp Schriever, and they had an advance party that went from New Jersey to France as an advance party for more training. It was mostly officers and senior NCOs. The next group, the main body, left the Camp Schriever in South Carolina and went to Nova Scotia, Canada, to cross Europe because of the shorter distance to get to England. Remember what the Germans have now. They sunk the Lusitania with their U-boats, right? So fortunately for the passage that they made, they only saw one U-boat. So that was good. Then their next stop, of course, was France. And that's just kind of a hop, skip, and jump across the canal. The British set up phases of training for them. They had phase A and phase B. And they did this in a stepping process to get them used to what they were going to have to confront. Because remember, the British kind of went right into the war and lost hundreds of thousands of men with these new modern technology. I mean, this was a very deadly war, and if your tactics didn't match the weapon systems, then you're going to lose a lot. And it's really a shame too. General Kitchener, again, he's a British officer. He was in South Africa in the Boer War, taking on the Dutch, or the Afrikaners, as they were called. And so he used machine guns against the Afrikaners and beat them with that. And also, as a little aside, he also created the first concentration camp too, which isn't talked about much. But these ideas come from somewhere. And he used concentration camps of local civilians to suppress the rebellion. Well, the Kitchener brigades went there in World War I and charged machine gun nests just in an open field and just got wiped out. I mean, it's almost like they didn't learn anything from 20 years ago. But they got wise, and the British did us a huge service by training us. Our next, okay, that's 15, okay. Our next step is, of course, phase A, and that is in France. They did receive some fire in France because the Germans were using airplanes to do what? Disrupt the logistics of the Allied forces. So our guys in the 119th actually saw fire first. And it was done by aerial bombardment. And by all records from the Brits and Americans and the French said the Americans performed well under fire. The Brits didn't know what they had when the Yanks came. They were 12 pounds heavier. They were bigger. They required more to eat than the British did. They didn't know quite what they had, but every Brit that trained them said, and French officers too, said the Americans are highly motivated. They don't read their manuals. They don't sit still in class. But if you give them something to do, they got an intuition to do this kind of work. Well, what were they? Okay, they were farm boys from this area. I mean, the guys that broke the Hindenburg line that was thought impregnable came from right here. They were fishermen from OBX. They were farmers from Currituck, Camden, Pasquotank, Perquimans, Gates, and Chowan, also Burt T and Plymouth and Columbia. All these places here helped produce this 119th Regiment that was newly formed. And so what happened was that they started to train in Alpha. And once again, it's more bayonet training, it's more rifle training, it's more marching, it's more of everything. It's the same stuff, redundancy. They next moved to phase B, which is close to a canal, and that this canal was right in Belgium. So our guys were the first Americans to go to Belgium. We were the first ones in. And then we saw more action. There was a lot of security patrols. There was a lot of fire going back and forth. The main thing the British did, though, they taught them how to live in the trenches at this point. They taught them how to live in the trenches under fire. And if you've ever been in that situation, it is an art form to say to survive in an environment like that. And you have to know when to move, when not to move, because the German machine guns were very deadly. And during the day, you can just forget about movement, so you had to move at night. The next phase, they brought them to what was known as the San Quentin Canal Line. And that's where they launched the battle to break the Hindenburg Line. Now, keep in mind, they started this. I've covered several years of training from 1916 until 1918, September. But finally, they had enough experience and enough to break the line, according to the British. And the British had this in mind a long time ago for the Americans. Now, what you had was the 120th. If you can visualize this, and I apologize for not having visualization, but they moved out in a wedge formation. You had the 120th here, you had the 5th or 4th British here, and you had the 119th here. Okay, so the 119th was the tip of the spear going in. Our guys were the first ones to rupture the Hindenburg Line that was thought impregnable. Now that we're there, we can talk about Seth and what he did. Remember, the last 100 yards is for what? That's for the enlisted guys like Seth. It was noted that Seth led his group, admirably during the machine gun nest they had to take on. Now, when we say machine gun nest, I mean, we're talking about a company or more size machine gun company that the Germans had. I mean, we're talking about a lot of machine guns and covering the likely avenues of approach. So this was an intense battle. What happened was this: once the 119th ruptured the line, the 120th was behind them, and the British was right at the line. Now, also keep in mind, this Hindenburg Line was huge. There was a lot of other little battles going on too. You just couldn't put all your marbles in one part of the line and then not have other attacks going on, because what would the Germans do? The Germans would naturally put their reserves where they thought the thrust of the attack was coming. So they had to attack all along the line. I won't go through, it was a huge battle, but it was a lot of small battles in between too. And so I don't have time to go through all of that with you. So we'll just stick with where the 119th is. The 119th, it appears to me that they overextended themselves. And they were concerned about a German counterattack. And that's where Seth comes in. One runner was shot immediately trying to get the message to the 120th or the British 4th to say, hey, we need some help. We're going to lose ground if the Germans counterattack us. That guy immediately died. As soon as he crawled out and tried to make the run, he died. Seth volunteered right after this guy died. I don't know the guy's name. I should know it, but I don't know it. But he volunteered to run to the line, and he made it. He got the message through that the Germans were about to do a counterattack, but he was mortally wounded and died 3 days later of his wounds. Posthumously, he was awarded several awards. And also, he was initially interred in Flanders. He was reinterred in Pasquotank County at the courthouse. So when you walk by the courthouse and you see Seth Perry, you'll see Corporal Seth Perry. That's a grave. That's not a memorial, which is part of the reason I'm trying to bring this forward into the community to let them know that this is an actual person that's buried there. It's not a memorial, and it can't readily be moved, by the way. So it's not that it can't be moved, it just can't readily be moved because it's a grave. So that's what happened to Seth. Now the 119th continued through the rest of the war. They continued fighting through October. It was their rupture of the Hindenburg line that caused the Germans to retreat, and they never gained a foothold after that. By the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month, 1919, almost a year later, the Germans surrendered. And the agreement they made is actually the roots of World War II, which is another story that we won't get into today. But nonetheless, I wanted to let you know what Seth did specifically, but I also want to let you know what all the guys from this area did to help win the Great War. And it truly was the Great War. It truly was the war. It was supposed to be the war that ended all wars. A few more local things I'd like to talk to you about. The propaganda really ramped up against the Huns, or the Germans, but the Huns, as they were called in the paper, and the Kaiser. Ramped up so much that it has a local, there's a local story to this. There was a German family before World War I that moved here and set up a bakery. And overnight, I've read two passages. I've read one that was set afire. I've read one that there was a bomb. I don't know. I've talked to the family member. A family member told me it was a bomb. So but there is two different versions in the local papers. So, but that was part of the propaganda against our enemy, even though this is a German family that had probably been here forever. It recently moved to Elizabeth City, but had been in the United States forever. So that's an idea. And also the Alien and Sedition Act was a problem too with a lot of people, a lot of civil libertarians at the time. So it's just kind of funny. I bring this up because, we're dealing with similar, not exactly the same. I don't say history repeats itself, but certainly it rhymes. And so it's just something for us to have food for thought on. So far as the 119th goes, it did get called up again in World War II. And the Germans gave them a nickname, called them Roosevelt's SS troops, the entire 30th Division. And also the entire 30th Division got the nickname called the Hellcats. Like I say, when your enemy gives you a nickname, you're effective. And so World War I, they were known as the Hellcats. During World War II, they're known as Roosevelt's SS troops. And SS being the ideal German soldier, that was a compliment. Even though we wouldn't think of it as a compliment, the Germans meant it as a compliment. Next, the National Guard system still wasn't quite fully formed as a federal National Guard system until 1948. So the states still had mostly control of the armories and the soldiers and everything, unless they were federalized. Upon federalized, then they would become federal troops. After 1948, not so much. They became more federal troops than state troops. And in the 1950s, from 48 till probably 1964, the 119th was truly a localized unit that helped out the community. Called up for Hurricane Hazel. I don't think anybody is left that remembers that hurricane. Maybe you do. Okay, okay, we got it. And also, they were called up in the western part of the state for a prison riot, to put down a prison riot. And that's about the only thing that really happened of any significance, other than the fact they were civil defense, that they were truly a civil defense. You know, we always think of National Guard as civil defense. Well, in the 1950s, they were truly civil defense, more so in the sense that they were integrated with the police here locally in Edenton and Hertford and Elizabeth City. They had different plans, and they were mostly never used as policing directly, but they were used as blocking forces to channelize the urgency into the police line. So that was mostly their job, although they did train for riot control too. And then in the 1960s, their mission changed. They became a unit that was part of the Cold War era, and their job was to defend Italy. And they got armored personnel carriers, and they became more of a mechanized infantry unit. And they pretty much stayed a mechanized infantry unit with APC 113s. You can look those up. They're all over the internet. And then in 1995, they transitioned to the Bradley. They got some of the older Bradleys and started working with them. And then in the year 2000, the 119th was shut down. It was shut down completely, and it became a supply unit. And then the supply unit went away, and now you don't have a National Guard armory. And what's really sad is that in 2000, a tradition ended that started in this region from the French and Indian War until the modern era. And it was kind of sad to see it go. But anyhow, I guess everything ends, everything has to end sometime. What's really unfortunate is this region doesn't have a National Guard. And if you need a National Guard, trust me, you know, if you're stuck in snow in Camden somewhere and can't get a vehicle back there, or during a flood, then you need military vehicles to get some people out of these urgencies. So I'm assuming they probably have a plan, and I'm unaware of it, but I'm sure that I got total faith that the state of North Carolina has some kind of plan to help those folks. At any rate, but that kind of ends the Seth Perry part of this. I can take some questions if you like. If I can't answer it, I'll just tell you I can't answer it. I'm not a historian. I'm just kind of a amateurish mouthpiece, if you will. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Yes, sir. No, there's no National Guard here. Your next National Guard unit is in Windsor and also in Ahoskie. But you don't have one in Elizabeth City or Edenton as you did for 350 years. Yes, sir. No, sir, I do not. But it was horrific. I can say this: I've read. I'm not a statistics guy really, so I don't. I kind of, when I do my research, I kind of bypass that. But I know the 119th took heavy casualties to break the Hindenburg line. I mean, they took some heavy casualties. And I've read passages in World War I where a soldier is sitting in the trench and his buddy got shot. And because of logistics at the time, the guy would just sit there and rot away into a skeleton. So, if you want to look at some of the art that was produced after World War I in Europe, you get an idea of just how horrific it was. Because, if you look up the art during that time, there's a backstory to it. It's usually a soldier either putting forth something in the form of poetry or Dadaism, or even Monet style art. I can't think what it is now. Sorry. Yes, sir. Somebody else had a question. Yes, sir.
Yes. Seth Perry, was he born here in Elizabeth City? And if so, what year was he?
Yes, he was born in Elizabeth City, 1893. I believe 1893. And he's the only Pasquotank County native that was killed in World War I. Now there is another post here, 288, and their hero is Linton J. Sutton. He died of disease in France during the same time, but he was connected to Blackjack Pershing's command. He died in Paris, France, of disease, and he was born in Camden, though. So Seth Perry still remains the only known native casualty from Pasquotank County. And if you want to get an idea, in the 1950s, it's kind of like when one group's phasing out, that's when you get your plaques and your monuments and stuff. On the courthouse lawn, there is on the courthouse, there is a plaque that was put there in the 1950s that lists all the men from this county that fought in World War I. And it says Seth Perry, the only known native casualty from Pasquotank. Also, one thing we're trying to do is a Legion post where we want to put out the exact message that the War Department put out about Seth. And we want to put it on a highway plaque. We also, just so you know, his medals are in the foyer of the courthouse, and we'd also like to put a plaque there. And we hope that the county commissioners will let us make it part of the ecotourism in this region. I think it's an interesting story for people that don't know about it. And hopefully the American Legion can put enough information in the foyer of the courthouse and on a highway marker on Road Street somewhere to remind people to come by and visit his grave and look at his medals. The medals were all received posthumously, of course. Anyone else? Okay, I guess. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you say that again, please? I did mention that, we're selling books if you want to buy one, and proceeds go to Distressed Veterans Fund for homeless veterans and veterans in need of any need, really. So I just want to make sure, you knew about, I think I did mention that, but we'll do it again. Can't hurt. Thanks again, everybody. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.